Trying. I am trying. I don't want to do too much rehash today because that always takes such a long time. Although it is important. I mean, you guys, if you clearly this is part 4. So if you want more information, go check out the first 3 parts. I think we've done a pretty good job of debunking at least the history of it. You know, I put sub and it says submissive meaning is the first thing that comes up. Fuck would that be on here? First of all, who doesn't know what submissive means? But why would anybody be looking that up at this point? That's the number one thing popping up, huh? All right, so literally, I'm not doing any of that, all the other history today. I'm just jumping right in. We had just gotten done with the Holland. Discussions between the English clergyman and inventor George Garrett. Wait. Yeah, George Garrett and the Swedish industrialist Thorsten Nordenfeldt, of course, Thorsten Nordenfeldt, led to the first practical steam-powered submarines armed with torpedoes and ready for military use. The first was Nordenfeldt 1, a 56-ton, because I recently found out that's different. For some reason, tons is a measurement and tones is a measurement, and tones is like a little bit less than tons. I don't know. 64-foot vessel, similar to Garrett's ill-fated Resurgam 1879, with a range of 150 miles, 130 nautical miles, armed with a single torpedo in 1885. So I guess the Holland was from 1897, and that was the Navy's first submarine. But I guess we're jumping back here to 1885. We're going backwards. Because again, this is just a really bad book report. It's not even like it's strange how this works. Okay, so replica of Resurgam built in 1878, 1879. This replica was built in 1997 and is on display close to the Woodside Terminal. So this was the submarine that we're talking about. That looks totally believable, doesn't it? Here's one of the sketches for it. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, well, let's build that right away. So the Resurgam, I shall rise again, that's Latin for I shall rise again, is an early submarine from the Victorian era, and its prototype designed and built in Britain by Reverend George Garrett. So not only was he a reverend, he was also an engineer. The Reverend Engineer. Inventor, you know. What's up, my homeboy? And floating metaverse. What's happening? She was intended as a weapon to penetrate the chain netting placed around ship hulls to defend against attack by torpedo vessels. Okay. You vote for Trump, ain't you, sir? That's the kind of English that I would expect from a Trump supporter, for sure. Am I near Detroit? Yes. Vasectomy, not fun. The first Resurgam, built in 1878, was a 14-foot, hand-powered one-man vessel named the Curate's Egg because of her shape. She was 1/3 size prototype for Garrett's design. The second Resurgam, nice, from Windsor, Don't we have the craziest bunch of old world buildings around here? Like, isn't it strange when you start looking at Detroit, Windsor, all these areas around this, you know, this hub, this where the lakes all come together and whatnot. And isn't it? I mean, you look at all the buildings that are just scattered everywhere. I mean, the abandoned buildings around here, and you just who built all this shit? Hell yeah, I'm a Trump supporter because he's been doing stuff others ain't about to do. Yeah, sure. Like, can you name anything, or are you just gonna keep talking nonsense? Because that's usually what Trump supporters do. And you definitely don't want to talk about the fact that, like, the reason so many people lost their businesses, their livelihoods, and everything is because Trump locked them down. You definitely don't want to talk about the fact that Trump was best buddies with Epstein. And you definitely don't want to talk about the fact Trump lost the first election by 2.7 million votes. And yet the swamp he was going to drain put him in anyway. 45. Sir, he fixing y'all's border. So many things I can't even name. Right. Isn't it funny how they always do that? They say something about the border that nothing was wrong with the border until Trump started running for president. Then he starts running with the same rhetoric that he ran with in 2015. And all these idiots say, and then they go, and there's so many other things. Why? Then why don't you name them? Like at the point where you're trying to prove something, you should be putting your best foot forward and naming a bunch of things. Our border needs to be fixed. Our border's not broken. The idea that the border is broken and that all these illegals are coming across, and I mean, it's just such nonsense. It's such nonsense. The Jewish people are his entire cabinet. Of course they are. Right. The Jews run the shit. Trump is a Jewish puppet. That's all he's ever been. Everything is wrong with the border. Yep. Because we wouldn't want those Mexicans to come in and pick strawberries, would we? Oh, man. I want to pay $15, $20 for a pack of strawberries, don't you? They're just so stupid. The fentanyl epidemic, that's not coming from the southern border. That's coming across in the shipping ports and from the northern border. But we don't talk about that because, well, those are white people. These people are delusional. They're insane. They're not just delusional, they're insane. The Jewish people are insane. Their whole belief structure is insane. And until people understand that not only is it insane, it's okay to say it, it's just going to keep happening. But then again, most people think that they don't understand that their Christian nonsense is Jewish nonsense. Joe and Kamala do so many bad stuff. Yep, you've already proven your intelligence is way low. Manny? What's Manny? Manny bad stuff. As a Indian, we always support Mr. Trump. Oh, so because of your race, you do stupid things? Like, that's racist. You're just being racist. If somebody said that about, well, because you're Indian, you support Trump. Indians are too stupid to come up with their own thing, so they support Trump. Like, you'd be really upset. But you want to blame your stupidity on being Indian and think that's okay. And pretty typical shit, man. It's just all typical shit. Dumb Troll says, answer me. Dumb Troll didn't say anything else. Anyway, let's move forward with this. Let's see. The Resurgam was built. The Resurgam 2 was built by Cochrane and Company at Birkenhead, and launched on November 26, 1879. Her construction was of iron plates fastened to iron frames. Again, these people don't have power tools, so how they're doing all this is really interesting. With the central section of the vessel clad with wood secured by iron straps. Okay. As built, she was 45 feet long by 10 feet in diameter, weighed 30 long tons, and had a crew of 3. 30 long tons, whatever a long ton is, but again, at 30 tons, That's 60,000 pounds. I mean, what are they using to move 60,000 pounds back then? You must care about what he's saying because, dude, this troll has been here for weeks. This is what they do. They come in, they start saying stupid shit, but they're not smart enough to actually engage in the conversation or engage in anything said. So it's just about attention and it's about derailing the feed. But they're just too stupid to realize that they actually make the feed. They actually, if it weren't for the trolls being as stupid as they are, it would make it really hard for me to prove that they exist. But they just come on here and can't wait to prove me right. Everything they do proves me right. So don't get bothered by them. Don't even get stuck engaging with them. They're stupid. And if you are watching and you support, like the video, share the video, subscribe, do all that shit. I hate saying all that stuff, but it's important. Got to do it. She was powered by a closed cycle system or a closed cycle steam engine originally patented in 1872 by the American engineer Emil Lamb. Closed cycle steam engine, which isn't blue, so I can't look it up. Oh, that, huh? He the real deal, pal, accept it. He own you. Not even sure what you're talking about. Like, because you're so dumb, whatever you're trying to say doesn't come across right. You gotta do some proofreading or something. Which provided enough steam to turn the single propeller for up to 4 hours. She was designed to have positive buoyancy, and diving was controlled by a pair of hydroplanes amidships. What? At the time, she cost 1,500 pounds. After successful trials in the East Float at Wallesley, it was planned that Resurgam would make her way under her own power from Birkenhead to Portsmouth for a demonstration to the Royal Navy. But it didn't work, I guess. On December 10th, 1879, Resurgam, crewed by Garrett, Jackson as skipper, and Prince, engineer, set out for Portsmouth. However, during the voyage, mechanical problems caused the crew to dock at Floyd Harbor. Row for repair. RHYL for repairs. Once completed, and after trials, the crew set sail on the night of February 24th, 1880, in a high wind, towed by the steam yacht Elfin, which Garrett had bought to act as a tender. So that's the boat that goes along with these supposed submarines, but they're not submarines. The Elfin developed engine problems, and the Resurgam's crew transferred to her to assist. Because the entry hatch on the Resurgam could not be fastened from the outside, the submarine began to ship water, and the tow rope broke under the added weight. The Resurgam sinking in Liverpool Bay off Ryle on February 25th, 1880. Interesting, huh? Yet again, we're told that this exists, but every single time I read you one of these, the like maiden voyage or whatever, the thing sinks. Discovery of the wreck. For many years, the exact location of Resurgam was a mystery. In 1995, she was found by an experienced wreck diver. Blah, 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 blah. The Resurgam's hull is still intact, although partially damaged in the remains, and remains at risk from illegal diving and trawling. Since her discovery, the conning tower steering wheel has been broken and portable items have gone missing. I mean, this is okay. So that's the next evolution in submarines, and yet it doesn't fucking say anything. You inspire me to go to school, or else I'll end up like you. Right? You would hate to be somebody that's reading, because reading the information you're supposed to read is a bad thing. I love when people say stupid things, man. That diver is a Trump voter. Okay. Again, all you Trump supporters, you Israel supporters, you're just pieces of shit. At the end of the day, your motivation is racial. If you say it's because of the borders, then it's because you have racial motivations. Because for some reason you think the South Americans, the Mexicans are the big bads, and Trump needs to protect you from them. And if you lock your doors at night, then you should think then you should support a border. If you don't support the border, then don't lock your doors at night. Because you know how you're scared of Mexicans?
No.
No, you are. And you know how, I was
Five
just going to
times.
say, you know
Not
how
one of them.
you got assaulted by all those Mexicans?
Not one of them was Mexican. Not one of them was black.
Hmm. But hey, that's okay. We don't talk about that stuff. Like it's just so typical. It's just so typical. Like I said, if these guys could debunk or say anything intelligent, they would. They would lead with it. You lead with your best argument. And you try your best to show that you're smarter than the other person in this kind of scenario. And when their best arguments are this kind of shit, it says a lot. It really does. So anyway, so we have gotten to the Resurgam in 1879. A reliable means of propulsion for the submerged vessel was only made possible in the 1880s with the advent of the necessary electric battery technology. Oh, well, that's convenient. The first electrically powered boats were built by Isaac Perrell. Y. Y. What is with the lowercase y? What does that mean in somebody's name? What's the lowercase y supposed to signify?
I don't know.
Caballero in Spain, who built Perel. Let's see. What is this? Perel was the first successful submarine to be entirely powered by electric batteries and the first fully military capable submarine in history. Seems like I've read that several times already, that some other thing was the first, but okay. It was built by the Spanish engineer and sailor Isaac Perrell for the Spanish Navy at the Arsenal de la Caraca, now Naventina. The submarine was launched on September 8th, 1888. Like, it's just so interesting to think, like this guy's a sailor, which I would imagine probably takes a lot of his time to make his bones and feed his family or whatever it is. Sailing, he probably have to do a lot of sailing to be able to pay his bills. But when he's not out sailing, he's designing submarines. And you think, like, because you're a person that exists in 2024, you sort of forget how difficult things were pre-cell phone, pre-internet, pre-computer. And you have to think, like, okay, so this guy in Spain, how did they have accurate records of the previous submarine attempts built by other people around the world? Like we just, again, we take it for granted that you want to know something, so you go Google it. Well, how did they do that back then? Are we saying that the library in the town that he lived in just happened to have all of the information about some previous submarines built, in 1620 by Cornelius Drebbel? The craziest thing is, so many of you have never heard the name Cornelius Drebbel before, and you really do need to you need to. Damn, where do all these viewers come from? Who knows? Just let's roll with it. I hope all these viewers hate Israel. I hope all these viewers hate Judaism just as much as I do. And I know that's a good way to kill your views, but I don't care. I don't want the message to be missed. I don't want the opportunity to be lost. It is okay to condemn Israel. It is okay to condemn the Jews. You owe them nothing. And when people bring up Semitism, anti-Semitism, you should be proud of anti-Semitism. I am, because I know what those words mean. I know that Semitism means showing Jews favor, hence supremacy. So anti-Semitism is anti-supremacy. If somebody calls you anti-Semitic, that's a dick move. You should be mad at them. Semitic refers to all the people. The Jews don't own the term Semitic. That's Palestinians and all that alike. Those are Semitic people. Iranians, Iraqis, even black people, Northern Africans are Semitic people. Anti-Semitic is a racist term. Anti-Semitism is something you should be proud of. Let's see. The first submarine was used in the Civil War. It wasn't. See, this is where it's always interesting to me, because you get these people that come in and act like they were just researching submarines. So they happen to know all of this shit. And so then they come in here and they say things really arrogantly, really, oh no, the first submarine was in the Civil War. No, it wasn't. No, the first submarine on record is from 1620. But all the submarines that what we're talking about, we're not talking about submarines. Submarines don't exist. I mean, you hear about these supposed submarines that they built back in the 1880s, 1860s, that could dive down 93 feet, 103 feet, and open a hatch on the bottom so they could harvest clams and pearls and oysters and shit. You believe that? You believe that shit? Okay, here we go. My dad was a quartermaster on a submarine for 4 years in the Navy, and I was in the Navy myself. What's this talk about them being fake? Isn't it strange how, as always, there's just another random person who's like, oh yeah, I know about submarines. Yep, no, my blah, blah, blah. Sure you do. Sure you do. Submarines are boats. They're boats that most of the boat can go under the water. But for the most part, if all of it goes underwater, I think it can only all go under for a very short period of time. And I don't think it can go very deep. The idea of the hunt for Red October and submarines swimming around like dolphins and shit, I don't think that's real. It's Sunday, pump the brakes. I love when people think they can tell me how to run my feed. Genuine question, what is the importance of this topic? What is the importance of this topic? To show you how much you're lied to. If you accept the idea that you're lied to about this, about that, about this, then you might be willing to understand that and ask who's doing the lying and why. I do think this is another distraction, just like everything is unless we're talking about Israel and the genocide and the Jewish conspiracy. Yeah, we're actually being distracted. And that's the only thing that should be talked about. But other than that, we have to deviate a little bit sometimes. Yes, we're all like, yes. Military people are all liars. I'm more than comfortable with that. Military people are brainwashed into being liars. That what they're doing is for the benefit of everybody. So it's okay that they lie. Let's see. I must have gone into a deep rabbit hole about a submarine conspiracy. Dude, you're on the internet. There is billions of people. Why is it shocking that people do things besides get high and talk stupid shit? Our Navy subs can spend weeks and months underwater. Yep, that's what they say. Not bothering to ask how. How do they make air? What is the process for making air? And see, this is the thing that I really don't understand. If I'm wrong, then why does it bother people so much? If I'm wrong, I'm reading the history of submarines. I should come to a point where it starts making sense. Because it hasn't yet. But until that point, you should be more than confident. You know they're real. You think I'm wrong. Well, I'll find that out, right? I'm literally reading the information I'm supposed to read. Yet for some reason, it bothers people. They get mad. Why do they get so mad? It's so strange. It's the same thing as the earth shape. It's the same thing, like even religious people. You ask religious people why they believe in their God, and instead of getting all happy and looking at it like this is an excuse to talk about my beliefs and hopefully bring somebody else into the fold and blah blah blah, they get mad at you. You ask a Trump supporter, why does he support Trump? And he gets mad. Like it's the same weird shit every little thing. Thoughts on Ocean's Gate Titan? Don't know what that is. Oh, we literally had somebody that thought the best thing to type would be bruh WTF. Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a good argument. They make air chemically, bro. Yep, they make air chemically. Right. That's sort of the like you would think you would have a better answer. They make air chemically, bro. Oh, well, how? I was told that they made there was a process of adding high concentrate carbon dioxide or peroxide mixed with manganese, and the result was whoa, heat that could be used for propulsion and breathable oxygen. Yet every single story that involves the AIP, the air intake engine, they fail. All of these stories fail. So why do I keep reading about all these initial submarines that failed? It seems strange. None of these work. Somebody says TOU are a sheep. Couldn't even be bothered to spell check your 5 words. And I am a sheep because I don't believe the narrative. Makes sense. Words aren't here either. Bro trolling. Yep, bro. It's embarrassing. It really is. That's almost the worst part about doing this. Is you realize just how stupid the average person is when you do these videos and you see people saying things like bro trolling. Like it's just amazing. I bet you think 1 times 1 is 2. I think Terrence Howard makes a reasonable argument with that. And I don't think the Jews tell us everything we're supposed to believe, and that's all true. But I also know that Terrence Howard is famous. He's a famous actor. He's a black guy that brought a bunch of heat on black guys at the exact same time the other black guys, Cat Williams and Kanye West, were all the distractions from Jewish people to bring the attention, the negative attention on the black people. Diddy, all of you distracted by Diddy. The Jews have been doing what Diddy is accused of since Hollywood existed. Like that's what they do. The Jews are the ones that gave Kanye the career to be able to do what he does. I went down in a submarine to this guy and basically, yep. So now this other random person is here and they went down in a submarine before. Yep. Yep. How do plants make air, sir? Why do you believe plants make air, sir? This is one of those things you never bother to question. You get told that trees make oxygen and you just go, okay. Have you ever seen a tree make oxygen? I mean, you can sort of giggle and all this other shit all you want, but answer. Like, so essentially, if I have a few plants in a room, I could be in a hermetically sealed place forever because my carbon dioxide that I breathe out is going to continuously feed the plant while the plant is going to continue to make oxygen. Right? Isn't that how it is? Shouldn't submarines just be full of plants and then they could live, forever? Just because you don't understand how something works doesn't mean it's not real. So my dad and my buddies didn't spend months underwater. Or so I just believe you. Because, I have reason to believe you. It's not like the trolls or the military or the system, whatever, is going to have bots that come out and lie. No, the system always tells the truth. Are birds government drones? Yep. submarines. I mean, not all birds, but I'm sure there are plenty of birds out there that are fake. Why wouldn't they be? You know, it's like these people come in and they say these stupid things like they're supposed to be some sort of burn or something. But why, like, why do you trust anything your government says? You honestly think we went to the moon in 1969, figured it all out, and then stopped? We just stopped going? When you believe in the James Webb Space Telescope and all that shit too, right? You were told to believe in the James Webb, so you do. You have no idea how the James Webb works. You have no idea literally anything about it, but you believe it's out there. Give me what this guy is smoking, right? Chemically. They make it through chemical reactions. Are you thick? Yep, they make it through chemical reactions. So, can anybody tell me what the chemical reaction is, the chemicals you mix together to make oxygen? Why is that such a hard thing? Everybody's fucking, you know, talking a bunch of shit, but they're not saying anything. Submarines make oxygen through electrolysis. Sure. Ocean's Gate Titan was the 5-person submarine that went exploring the Titanic. Oh, yeah, that. I just don't care about shit like that. I don't care about distractions like that. I have no idea what that is. I know that submarine looks way different than any submarine I'm told exists. And I just, you know, when it comes to shit like this, like most of you just accept the idea that Kobe died. You don't think anything of it. But when you start looking into the whole story, it's like, wait, what are you talking about? If you remember it, there was a what the logistics of things always ruin the narrative. If you whatever you're given, question logistics. And logistics includes motivation. But when you learn that like all the air traffic was grounded that day, and there's actually 2 stories about what happened to Kobe. One was that the helicopter went up and stalled. The other one was that it was going up and it didn't go up high enough, fast enough, and it clipped the ground and crashed. Either way, right off the bat, they were saying that we could tell from the long distance pictures that the fire is so hot, it must be a magnesium fire, so it's burning super hot, and anything that's up there is just getting shredded. And so again, what you've forgotten is that immediately there was some bikers that were in the area that happened to have GoPro helmets on. And when they pulled up to the wreckage, there were no bodies anywhere. They looked around. It wasn't like this hell on earth scene. It was like a fire and there was some stuff there. But it wasn't like you saw charred bodies holding each other or anything like that. And even more so, the biggest thing about the Kobe thing is, hey, when was the funeral? Can anybody tell me that? One of the biggest stars of our time is killed in a tragic helicopter crash with his fucking daughter. And according to the narrative, his wife called the media and asked them not to show, so none of them did. Somehow she called all of the media outlets, even the small little podunk ones, and not a single reporter, not a single Inquirer reporter with their telescopic lenses and all that, not a single picture exists of the Kobe Bryant funeral, and you think it's real. There's not enough there for you to ask questions about it. You just go, well, the government, the system tells me to believe this story, so I do. Oxygen was put out of photosynthesis. That's true. Yep. Oxygen was output of photosynthesis. That's true. See, again, my big thing is that I'm trying to break through the arrogance, right? Because the arrogance is the issue. Everybody just thinks they know stuff because they were told stuff. They don't know this shit. You can't even tell me the process by which you would watch, you would observe, you would prove that photosynthesis, produces air, that plants produce oxygen. You have no fucking idea. But these are the things you don't bother to think about. Why don't you go to the Gulf and buy a ticket on a submersible? Thousands of tourists go on them every year. They literally have windows. Yeah, I know. That's called a submersible. That's a boat that drops down, but the top still stays out. I've been on a glass bottom boat before. Yeah, they're cool. That's not a submarine. A dolphin hunt for Red October submarine. How did we go from Jews giving Kanye the career to back to submarines? Because the Jews are the main part of all of it. And the submarine aspect is just me being distracted, allowing for a distraction to take place. The real conversation is always about the Jews that control the narrative. Well, bro, have you ever seen a person breathe oxygen? I've never seen somebody breathe oxygen in water or from water. They've had a tank on with pressurized air. But they don't just, the system that they, like the idea of a snorkeling or a diving system, they don't just put the chemicals that mix together and make oxygen into the tank and then they have a forever tank. That's not how that works. They have to pressurize oxygen into special tanks with regulators on them and all that shit so that it releases just the right amount of oxygen. But that's already pressurized air. That's not, see again, instead of, it's like you come here with this shit attitude, acting like you have stocks in submarines.com, and if people stop believing in submarines, you're going to lose money. Instead of you realizing that, we're in the same boat, so to speak, I'm just trying to figure this shit out. And it seems like it should be a lot easier to figure this out. When I go to YouTube and I type in submarines in action, and all I see are pictures of boats. Boats. And then I'm shown this other, there's a screen in screen. At the bottom corner, there's the screen, and that's showing the crew that is in the sail, the top part, that thing that sticks up. The crew cabin is in there. The control cabin is in there. It's not at the very top. It's like in the middle of it. And that's it too. They're in that sail part that initially breaks through the ice.
Yes.
Right. So they show that this sub is like 70 feet down at one point, and it's going up real hard so it can bash through the ice. That it can do that with the compartment that they're in. And if people understand, like, the Titanic was sunk because they brushed up against an iceberg and the jagged ice just ripped a big hole in the steel. That's literally what the story that we're given is, if you believe it. But busting through ice, solid ice that's super, like 4 or 5 feet thick, that's literally no problem. Not only can they do it, but when they do it, the footage of the crew doesn't even like jerk a little bit like they hit ice, like they hit any resistance. Literally nothing happens. They go contact and then they go through it, and they're just sitting there like do. If you've ever been on a boat, even the smallest waves you can feel. So the idea that you're in this water, you're going straight up, hard enough to crack through the ice, and when you hit the ice, there's no movement. That should tell you something. Chaotic lizard is rage baiting. Blah blah blah. So I'm gonna keep reading these comments for a minute, and then I'm gonna go back to my my article here. But I want you to see how many people don't actually address anything I say. They just complain about me talking about it, which is just so strange to me. Why does me talking about this bother people so much? Oh, well, Walter H., it's working. This is a Payco. This is a Payco tube. Okay. Bro is trolling. Legit said trees don't make oxygen. Again, look at the arrogance. You know trees make oxygen because of what? How do you know? Have you seen trees produce oxygen before?
No.
The only reason you know trees produce oxygen is
Science.
because you've been told. Yeah. What science can you do?
Makes perfect sense.
How does it make perfect sense?
The whole process. I mean,
explain it. What makes perfect sense?
What doesn't, I guess, is the question, because it makes sense.
Again, I'm trying to understand. See, this is what's weird, is this is how this works with everything. When I ask people what they believe and why, they don't know.
Okay, well, I mean, do you believe the leaves soak up the sun? Do you?
Yeah, the leaves definitely, the sunlight is definitely affected by the leaf, or the leaves are definitely affected by sunlight. The plants are definitely affected by sunlight. Do they take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out and turn, and essentially they breathe that in and breathe out oxygen? I don't know. I don't see that. I don't understand why that would be a thing. You know, if that makes sense, I just, again, I how do I know? There's literally no way for me to prove it. And if that is the truth, like I say, then you should line the inside of the submarine with plants. And then all the people inside could just breathe out their oxygen or their carbon dioxide, and the plants would breathe out oxygen instead.
What sunlight do they have in the submarine?
It has nothing to do with sunlight.
Plants need sunlight, 100%.
Well, but they can also create artificial light. We can grow plants with artificial light. So, I mean, I grew a plant in my closet once using a fucking black light. I was surprised as hell it grew, but it grew with a black light. Plants are super resilient. But the notion, like, it's just more of the same arrogance that we've all been programmed with, and we just don't think about it. You know the earth is round because they tell you it is. Like, you know, all of you, everybody that believes in Jesus and believes in deep space, you believe in two contradictory things, and you believe them because you were told to believe them. That's it. That's all it is. You have literally no reason to. As a matter of fact, your existence tells you the opposite. And the more you look into it, the more you try to prove it. Like you see these people all the time. Just try to prove the earth is round. Don't try to disprove it's flat or it's not round. I don't say it's flat. I just say it's not round. Don't try to disprove that. You just prove your side of the argument. And that's literally what I'm trying to do with this video and this series, I guess, is I'm trying to prove that submarines exist. I mean, it's not like I'm looking into some conspiracy pages or somebody else's work. I'm looking at what they want me to look at. I'm looking at the narrative that I'm supposed to read. Just rent a submarine and go yourself, bro. Yep, let me just do that. Hey, sweetheart, how about next weekend we rent a submarine and we go for a little undersea adventure? Trees, come on. This man is talking facts. Good luck to you. You seem angry, and I can't really. Gotta love the shoot the messenger thing. Because I'm angry. And the thing is, if genocide, if Israeli genocide of innocent women and children and men, if all of the rape culture that's associated with the Jews again in Hollywood and if all that stuff doesn't make you mad, I'm sorry if you think I have the problem. It makes a lot of bad days worse. I see a lot of angry people like you on YouTube. Are these the people that don't believe the narrative? Bro believes in flat earth. Rent a submarine, show your house. Again, why are so many people so desperately trying to get me to stop talking about this? If I'm wrong, the more I read into it, the more I'm going to look like the fool. So shouldn't you just want me to keep going? Are the ice walls real? Of course they are. They've been shown. Red Bull just showed you guys a bunch of ice walls. Red Bull did it. It's there. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to be if it's not ice walls. Trump, not even reading mine and others' logical chats. Yep, you're making lots of logical chats. This dude is me at 16 when I first found Alex Jones. Yep, because I'm always telling you guys to watch Alex Jones, right, sweetheart? Big Alex Jones fan.
Huge.
Then you grow up and realize it's much more complex than everything being a conspiracy. Some are definitely true, though. Well, what's a good thing you threw that in there then? Where do you draw the line? Yeah, I'm actually really proud to be as consistent as I am. I don't sit there and arrogantly pick and choose which conspiracies I believe or not based on what things I like, because that's what you're doing. That's what everybody does. Everybody believes the narrative they like. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't matter how much information you have one way or another. If you like the narrative, you believe it. That's why religion bribes you with things like eternal salvation and heaven and all that shit. Because they know their shit is so stupid, there's no actual reason or benefit for you to believe it. To give these pedophiles all the power that they have. You take your children to them. You never mind that these are men who aren't allowed to get married and who like to wear dresses all day. You hate when other people do that, but you take your children to the place where it's like everybody knows the church is full of pedos, and yet you continue to take your children there so you personally can get your salvation, because it's all selfish. Long and talking in circles. I just got off 6 months in a sub. Guess I was dreaming. We have a guy that literally just got off 6 months in a submarine, and he's on my feed.
Wow.
What an amazing coincidence. He was just going through his live feed looking for submarine videos, and he just happened upon this one. Amazing. Oh, he's a paranoid meth smoker. It's starting to make sense now. Yup, big meth smoker.
Is that what? Do you smoke meth?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you can do all of them. You can smoke it, shoot it, snort it. You can do it all.
Really?
Meth is the do all. This guy can't really believe this. Off the rails, off his meds, off reality, trifecta. See, again, how come everybody talks shit but doesn't actually debunk? Especially since I'm reading the fucking Wikipedia. I'm reading what we're supposed to know. So what are you debunking here? Superoxides, chlorates, perchlorates, ozonides. I've said it twice. Plus, there is reverse osmosis and electrolysis. Right. All those things just produce oxygen. Gotcha. So, again, this seems kind of weird, but why wouldn't they, instead of making big, heavy-ass oxygen tanks that they have to fill with a limited supply of oxygen, why wouldn't they make a tank that just slowly mixes the two chemicals together to produce enough oxygen for the person to breathe for indefinite periods of time? Just crazy. Dude doesn't believe people in the military. Hello, my dad was a QM on a sub, and I was an ABE on an aircraft carrier and had multiple friends on subs. Yep. I don't believe what military people say. I don't believe what people dumb enough to be tricked into killing people for rich Jew fucking nonsense. I don't believe what they tell me. What a surprise. Go figure. You're dumb enough to be tricked into patriotism. And, 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 the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You have to be secretive. And, and, and the military is full of that. You don't tell the citizens anything more than what you're told to, yet me not believing that makes me crazy. Walking isn't really a matter. Walking isn't real matter of fact. You aren't real. You were made in Canadian lab coat. I mean, see, look at this. This is what you guys can do. Like, at least the one person talking about oxidizers and all that shit's trying to make sense. I must be CIA. Yep. You were, and you weren't invited, so obviously it didn't happen. Old comments, stop blaming for a month and that long ago. Why can't you believe it until you see it? You can't believe it until you see it. Yeah, that's a pretty good philosophy, I believe. If you can't see it, if it doesn't make sense, if they can't prove it to you, you might not want to just give it your blind faith, because they use that against you and lie to you all the time. I bet he's been awake on a 4-day math bender. The Jews are awful. Bro loves Austrian painter, and this is what insanity looks like. No submarine go underwater, bro. Not a glass bottom boat. Oh, how do you know it's pressurized? Can you see it? Use your logic. How do I know it's pressurized? I can go literally buy a pressurized air tank. Like, that stuff is available to me. I don't have to trust somebody. Electrolysis. Electrolysis creates breathable oxygen. Well, I should find that out. This guy was cucked by a submarine in there, and a sub splits the water. Water is made by hydrogen, oxygen. Electrolysis splits water apart. Oh, yeah, there's that whole thing. Water is made of hydrogen, and it's H2H and 1O. We know the recipe, we just can't make it. How come we can't put in a room, we can't say, all right, let's vacuum this room out, and then we'll pump it with 1 part oxygen and 2 parts hydrogen, and it just all of a sudden makes a bunch of water? How come that doesn't happen? Weird, huh? Eating money around, doesn't know how to use Google. I'm trying. I'm literally trying to figure it out, but I got to deal with all this nonsense. Just because you don't know the mechanism doesn't mean, yep, oh no, you know things. How do you know things for sure? We're in Zimmerland and the programmer can't get the subs to work. Our steel was low quality. Cough, cough. Taking way too long to understand. It tore on the seams. The bolts were low. Yep. So now the Titanic sank because the ice tore it along the seams where the bolts were. It wasn't along the side. It was just nice and neat along the seams. Gotcha. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Iceberg is hundreds of feet wide. You just said subs coming. Yeah. So when you break through, like you're one of these guys that thinks you can punch through a window, right?
God, tell Nate to stop punching movies with his feet.
Come on, Nate. So the submarine comes and breaks through the ice, and when it breaks through the ice, the area that's still connected, that's not broken, that's not going to be jagged at all. It's a nice smooth cut all the way around, right? That wouldn't break anything.
No.
Like if you
He's still doing it. Can you send him to his room, please?
Can you stop? Can you both just stop?
I keep asking.
No, you heard what he said though, right?
He said you stop being a dick.
Right. So is that true? Are you being really, really nice and he's just
no,
being
Dad, but then
okay? So okay, you stopped for what? A second? Nathan, stop putting your feet on shit, man. Thank you. Let's see. So again, when you break through ice, like if you were to go stomp through some really solid ice, it wouldn't cut up the sides of your legs or anything, right? No, when you go through it, it creates this really smooth cut along the whole thing. There are no waves underwater. Yep. Right. So when you're going up and you hit something, there's not even going to be the slightest tremble. Nothing. Gotcha. I'm leaving. I long one and say, yep. He's already won. What are you talking about? My uncle was a submarine. Oh, now we have another uncle. Michael Morningstar. Michael Morningstar is letting us know that his uncle was a submariner. Gotcha. I've addressed each point. No, you haven't. Mom's basement. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Google photosynthesis. Yep. It makes perfect. Yep. It totally does. Put a plant in a jar underwater and watch the air it makes bubble up and then test the air. So you're going to put a plant in a jar and then it's going to create bubbles that come up. Yeah, I'd love to see that experiment. I'd love to know how you got the air out to begin with and then put the plant in, and then you know that the plant is creating said air. But hey, there's a good experiment. Innovation, you should be sent to North Korea. Like, again, isn't this weird? I just find it so fascinating how limited the resistance is. Like, it's just the same stupid shit. Well, I used words. I said electrolysis. I said chlorides and stuff. Yep. Because that process makes sense. And again, this is the part I don't understand. I'm literally reading what I'm supposed to read. So why does it bother you so much? I don't understand, so it's not true. That's what it is. If you want to know, go to school. Yep, because we all know schools are not about indoctrination.
No.
They're about learning. Can you see the wind? Like, that's not a comparable thing. The wind, I can go outside and feel it. I can go test for it. It's real. See, the strangest thing, I think one of the biggest, like sort of things, like with my wife. My wife's always really skeptical. But one of the things with her was when I showed her the video of it. And it's like, how come there's no videos of submarines submerging and then going around for a while and then coming back up? I mean, if you're saying they can't make a camera that can handle it, that's pretty lame. All right, so we're back to history here. Oh, wait, I got to finish reading these dumbass comments. Hydrolysis works much better to produce oxygen than plants. Hydrolysis. Yep, okay, hydrolysis. So we'll figure that out. So the thing is, this isn't something that existed yet. So somehow they were able to build all these submarines without the hydrolysis. But let's just see. Well, Einstein who gives a shit what the fraud Jew Einstein has to say? Nobody cares. This guy got bullied by oxygen and submarines. Wow, you are super smart. So you don't understand? Yep. I mean, again, it's the same dumb comments over and over again. Has nothing to do with sunlight. Tell you don't. Yep, I said that. Here's again, blah, blah. You can make oxygen with electrolysis way better than loading a sub with plants. You can make, everybody keeps saying electrolysis. So we're going to get to electrolysis creating oxygen. Oh my God, a flat earther. It's pear-shaped though. Yep, it's pear-shaped for sure. Let me guess, you voted for Harris. It says Copenhagen Cowboy. Let me guess, you vote. And you voted for Trump. Society wasn't built with people like this, that's for damn sure. Yup. Society was built by polymaths who could do anything at all times, everywhere. It was amazing. It's already been proven, blah, blah, blah. Read a book. Do more math. Ask the same question. Wait a minute. It really hasn't. Submarines do exist. Yes, but God damn it. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to skip. There are Freemasonic lodges on every military installation. Well, maybe there's something to that. Maybe. I love what you're saying. Submarines aren't real. People need to wake up to reality. I really agree with you, but I know you might be talking shit, so I don't really know. But let's see. Let's read more about the history of submarines. Like, you would think, again, this would be interesting, right? Because if you believe in, it's like the Trump supporter, right? If you're a Trump supporter and then you you fall for the idea that Kamala is terrified and doesn't want to do the debates, and Kamala this and Kamala that. He wants to do 3, and she's saying, oh, all I need is 1. And he's like, oh, she's scared to do more than 1. And she's going, no, all I need is 1. And then you watch the debate, and all the shit Trump talked about how inferior and weak she is, she just kicks the shit out of him. And then it's so bad that afterward, press and everybody's like, all right, when do you want to schedule the second one? And Kamala's like, yeah, whenever, we can do it again. And suddenly the Trump people are like, no, we don't want to do any more debates. And yet the Trump supporter still thinks that all makes sense. Like that's the kind of shit I just don't really understand. How can you be that stupid? We got a lot of people watching. We should have a lot of shares. We should have a lot of subs. We should have a lot of likes. You guys should be, I'm going to do my part. You guys do your part. Let's see. The first electronically were the okay, so that was where we were. The first electrically powered boats were built by Isaac Perel y Caballero in Spain, who built Perel, Dupuy Limon de Lome, who built Gymnote, and Gustave Zeddy, who built Cyrene in France, and James Franklin Waddington, who built Porpoise in England. Perel's design featured torpedoes and other systems that later became standard in submarines. I still want to know how they were seeing in these submarines back then. They're telling you that in 1860, they can build a submarine that can go down 103 feet, open up a hatch on the bottom, and harvest and be able to reach down and harvest oysters and shit like that. Because there's pressurized air in the submarine. They know exactly how much pressurized air to use to keep the water from coming in. And of course, the sub stays perfectly still so it doesn't rock even a little bit to cause the break in that, in that water tension. And they're just harvesting oysters and shit like that. Spending 4 hours down on the bottom of the harbor in 1860. How did they see anything? If anybody can tell me that, I'd love to know. What electrolysis were they using back then to create the oxygen they needed? And then you think about okay, so I'm to believe that this is, we always see these. These are always the pictures that we're given. These boats on the top of the water, guys sticking out of the boat. So this is from 1902. The USS Plunger launched in 1902. In 1902, we could build a submarine that could travel underwater, stay underwater for long periods of time, powered by electric batteries, this, that, and the other. And we barely had cars? Does that not sort of trigger something in your head to think, hey, wait, that doesn't make much sense. We were traveling underwater successfully long before we were able to drive cars, before we had cars. If that works for you, then I'm at a loss. I don't really know. I'd love to know how your brain works with that. I mean, you think about things like the Titanic. They were building these giant Titanic ships all the way back then. Hey, Nick, why don't you go to your room for a little bit, dude?
Why?
Because you're clearly being a jerk.
I'm not. He keeps asking me what time it is. This is what he does all the time.
Okay.
So go charge your watch, Nathan.
Right. I mean, this could be fixed without you being a jerk about it, though, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
But he walked in at a time for you to get a watch. Thanks.
So wait. So do you have the remotes hidden somewhere?
No,
So
they
he
got her in a
could
basket.
easily just look at it on the TV, right? So do that, Nate.
Wants to fight. It's more fun.
I mean, so here you go. Here's the Akula, launched in 1907. Was the first Russian submarine able to cruise long distances. Okay. What did I say the year was this? 1907. There's that submarine and there's that giant warship in the background. We're building this. I mean, you just like think about like cars of the 50s and shit. Think about the Model A and cars of the much earlier, the 40s, 30s, 20s and shit. That's 1907. That who knows how old those ships actually are, especially that big one in the background. But like again, if that doesn't make you think, hey, what the hell's going on? I really don't know. I like we're on different pages, different wavelengths here. I don't just see shit and go, yeah, we could do that. And then somebody goes, how? And I go, I don't know. I just know we could, and it doesn't really make sense and it doesn't match anything but I just believe it because I'm told to. Which is the main reason why I can't just believe in God. You guys don't think I want to be a Christian? That sounds great. If I just listen to the Jews, I don't call the Jews out. I just listen to the Jewish leadership. I do as I'm told, and I don't question things. When I die, I go to heaven. And it's awesome. It's awesome. It's not like those silly Muslims and their 72 virgin heaven. No. It's the other kind of heaven where, I mean, the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. It's such a goofy concept. Like, how does heaven work, right? The whole notion that like when you come to heaven, you're met by family. They're all waiting there to greet you. Well, how far does that go? How many first, second, third, fourth cousins do I have to do that for? I mean, there's a lot of people I've never met, so am I still required to meet them at the pearly gates? And I always wonder, like, something like someone like Jimi Hendrix, right? When I go to heaven, man, I'm gonna hang out with Jimmy and we're gonna blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, so just like down here, people would want to meet Hendrix and hang out with him and basically bug him. Is Hendrix then required to meet with everybody up there, or does he have like ghost bodyguards that keep people out? And is he required to still meet with all of his fans? He's perpetually going to have fans for all of eternity. Jimmy's music's never going to die, so is he just going to keep having to meet people because he's in heaven? And how does my heaven work? How could I be in heaven if my wife and children aren't there? And how old am I in heaven? And how does the time work? Am I in the year that I die? Or like, like do the people from the 1800s, do they get to be in the same heaven as me? Because we have such completely different, like my heaven's got to have a video game system of some sort, right? Do the people of the 1800s, do they not get access to that?
I don't know what video games are.
Right. How does that work? Is my grandmother's heaven next to my heaven, where I want to listen to loud music and shit? I want to shoot dope. I've never experienced what's so good that people ruin their lives over it. I'd like to know what that is, especially from the creative standpoint. All these famous Jimi Hendrix types. I want to know what all the hubbub was about. So am I allowed to shoot dope and listen to music right next to my grandmother's heaven? And what's her heaven look like? Like, it's all just really, really stupid. It really is stupid. How do you have heaven without your family there, but how do you have heaven with your family there? Same shit. Like, it's just weird. But these are all things that you get told to believe. As a kid, you probably question it some way, somehow, but you get yelled at, you get ostracized, you get, you get in trouble for asking questions that your parents can't answer.
Oh shit, I gotta poop.
And so you just sort of eventually accept it. The brainwashing works. You tell the lie loud enough and long enough, and people will fucking believe it. But it's also strange to me how like it's the same thing with everyone, everywhere, every belief structure. It's always the same. From these submarines to the Jesus. We're gonna go back to submarines. Let's see. Perils design. Okay. Commissioned in June of 1900, the French steam and electric Narvel employed the now typical double hull design with a pressure hull inside the outer shell. These 200-ton ships had a range of over 100 miles underwater. 200 tons. Just built that shit. Fuck yeah. 1900. The French submarine Aigrette in 1904 further improved the concept by using a diesel rather than a gasoline engine for surface power. Large numbers of these submarines were built, with 76 completed before 1914. The Royal Navy commissioned 5 Holland-class submarines from Vickers Barrow-in-Furness under license. Like, seriously. Barrow-in-Furness under license from the Holland Torpedo Boat Company from 1901 to 1903. Construction of the boats took longer than anticipated, with the first only ready for a diving trial at sea on April 6, 1902. Although the design had been purchased entirely from the U.S. company, the actual design used was an untested improvement to the original Holland design using a new 180 horsepower petrol engine. These types of submarines were first used during the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905. Never heard of the Russo-Japanese War. Due to the blockade at Port Arthur, the Russians sent their submarines to Vladivostok, where by January 1st, 1905, there were 7 boats, enough to create the world's first operational submarine fleet. The new submarine fleet began patrols on February 14th, gotta love that Valentine's Day tradition, usually lasting for about 24 hours each. The first confrontation with Japanese warships occurred on April 29th, 1905, when the Russian submarine Sam was fired upon by Japanese torpedo boats, but then withdrew. So we're just sort of yada-yadaing over things. And this is what you'll see so frequently with any sort of historical narrative. They're going to give you lots of details. So when you're reading it or when you walk away, you go, man, there were lots of details, so that must have been true. I must have read the truth because there's a bunch of details. I don't really remember them, but I know there was details, and details mean truth. And you don't realize that these details are they're stupid. They're not telling you how they came up with these engines, with these miraculous, advancements in this technology to be able to sustain underwater life. I mean, it's such a oxymoron. Underwater life is being sustained through these magical 200-ton steel contraptions with the pressurized air. And again, we're talking about in the 1900s. I mean, it's like really obvious when you look at historical narratives like this and you look at the buildings and you look at all this shit that we were clearly way ahead of what we're told. But then when you look at the people, the thing I never understand about like pictures from back then, it always looks like it's either really cold or the people are scared of the sun or something. Because everybody's dressed, for some reason, everybody's dressed to the nines. And the things that people say to answer for that are, well, modesty, and people had on their clothes that they wore. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You can't just wear the same outfit every day and it still looks pristine. You know, but you look at the way, like, people would go to the beach and they'd be dressed in a long flowing dress, like a big heavy wool cotton dress that seems like you get caught in a riptide in that motherfucker and you're gone. But even the guys, they wore those goofy bathing suits. And you just think, weren't people dying of heat back then? I mean, going to the beach in full length clothing and hats, and that's just, the narratives just don't make sense. They don't match up. And then you look in the backgrounds of all those pictures and you have these huge skyscrapers, huge ornate skyscrapers. And there's people like My Lunch Break. I think My Lunch Break's one of the better ones, where he does kind of the same thing I do, where you go and you just read what they want you to read. I'm telling you, you don't need to go into Alex Jones' conspiracy theory. All you need to do is read what you're supposed to read. And if it makes sense to you, lucky you. If it does, by all means, please tell me. Because for me, this shit just doesn't make sense. It's really frustrating. Frustrating. Did you hear what I said? I didn't say frustrating. I didn't say frustrating. It's frustrating. Just a little side note there. Military submarines first made a significant impact in World War I. Forces such as the U-boats of Germany saw action in the First Battle of the Atlantic and were responsible for sinking the RMS Lusitania, which was sunk as a result of unrestricted submarine warfare and is often cited among the reasons for the entry of the U.S. into the war. World War I was about establishing all the world wars, it's all about Israel. World War I was about taking over Palestine and creating British Mandate Palestine, which creates a scenario where for the next, 20 years or so, the Palestinians become completely reliant on the British for their protection, for their government, because they're under British rule. So there's not a Palestinian military being created. There's not, the people are just living, and they're actually living pretty well, so they don't really think too much of it. And then World War II happens, and now World War II somehow gives the excuse that what happened in Germany has to be now paid for by the Palestinians. And when they pulled the British out, suddenly one day the British just pull out, so to speak, even though they don't. They just switch sides. Because to say the British pulled out and then the Israelis attacked, well, how could there be Israeli military, Israeli anything, if Israel didn't exist? No, it wasn't. It was just the British who were now doing what they were told. The British, the Americans, under the Israeli control, went in and slaughtered a bunch of Palestinians and kicked a bunch more out. It's called the Nakba, means catastrophe. May 15th, 1948. And literally the day before, the British are pulling out. And the Palestinians are like, what the fuck is going on here? So the First World War was about, creating the ability to make this happen. And the Second World War gave the excuse. And that's just what they did. They moved them in and they fucking killed a bunch of Palestinians. It's just awful. If you don't, I have nothing to do with the Palestinians. I don't even think I'm not a free Palestine kind of guy. My fight is end Israel, not free Palestine, because Palestine is yesterday's story. They're moving on to Lebanon. They're moving on to Syria. The new Israel project is going to make Israel this huge fucking place. And they're just killing everybody. And they're going to be using American weapons, American troops, American money to do it all. But for me, like, again, it's not about free. What are we free Palestine to? Back before 67, back before 48, back before, 18. When is Palestine actually free? It's just an idea. It's a confusion. Should be ending Israel. And if you're watching my feed, share it. Like it, share it, and sub. I know that's irritating to hear, but I also know a lot of times when people say that shit, I go, oh yeah, and I forget. Because I'd forgotten to do, but they need to know that we are no longer their dumb goyim slaves. Right?
Did you see who's going to be president? Yeah, we are.
Yeah, well, we didn't have a choice. It's when people start to realize, it's amazing to me how many Trump supporters, they're like Christians, right? They think every other religion is stupid and just how could anybody ever believe in that? But my thing's good. The Trump supporters do the same thing with the candidates. They think everything it's all rigged. The whole system is rigged. The government's against us, blah, blah, blah. But somehow Trump is different for some fucked up. I don't even understand it. And normally they can't really explain anything. It just is what it is. So we're at the U-boats. Let's see what the U-boats have to say. The U-boats were naval submarines operated by Germany, particularly in the First and Second World Wars. The term is an angelicized version of the German word U-Boot, shortening of Unterseeboot, undersea boat. Unterseeboot. Though the German term refers to any submarine. Austro-Hungarian Navy submarines were also known as U-boats. U-boats are most known for their unrestricted submarine warfare. In both world wars, trying to disrupt merchant traffic towards the UK and force the UK out of the war. In World War I, Germany intermittently waged unrestricted submarine warfare against the UK. The first campaign in 1915 was abandoned after strong protests from the US, but in 1917, the Germans, facing deadlock on the continent, saw no other option than to resume the campaign in February 1917. The renewed campaign failed to achieve its goal, mainly because of the introduction of convoys. Instead, the campaign ensured final defeat, as the campaign was a contributing factor to the entry of the U.S. into the First World War. Fucking stupid. In World War II, Karl Donitz, supreme commander of the Kriegsmarine U-boat arm, I'm not even going to try to say that, Befehlshaber der Unterseeboot, was convinced the UK and its convoys could be defeated by new tactics and tried to focus on convoy battles. Though U-boat tactics initially saw success in the Battle of the Atlantic, greatly disrupting Allied shipping, improved convoy and anti-submarine tactics, such as high-frequency direction finding and the anti-Hedgehog submarine system, began to take a toll on the German U-boat force. This ultimately came to a head in May 1943, known as Black May. It's always black. Whenever it's bad, it's black, in which U-boat losses began to outpace their effect on shipping. All right, so let's see what early U-boats. The first submarine built in Germany was the three-man Brauntaker. We already read about the Brauntaker. It failed. It can't even really be considered a successful submarine. It fucking failed. Sank to the bottom of the Kiel Harbor on February 1st, 1851 during a test dive. Inventor and engineer Willem Bauer and designer had designed this vessel in 1850. Guys, listen to what I'm saying. 1850. And Schweffel and Howalt constructed it in Kiel. Dredging operations in 1887 rediscovered Broad-Tucker. She was later raised and put on historical display in Germany. Right. She sank in 1850, and then in 1887, we had the capacity to apparently dredge this what was this? The bottom of the harbor. This harbor where the boat was 16 meters, about 50 feet down. Right? About 50 feet. So back in 1887, not only did we have incredible dredging capabilities, but we also had the ability to raise ships off the bottom of the fucking harbor, 60 feet down. That makes sense to you, right? This is all just part of the discovery here. The boats Nordenfelt 1, Nordenfelt 2, built to a Nordenfelt design, followed in 1890. In 1903, the Friedrich Krupp German Werft dockyard in Kiel completed the first fully functional German-built submarine, Forel, which Krupp sold to Russia during the Russo-Japanese War in April 1904. Well, that was a mistake, huh? At the beginning of the century, the German commander of the Navy, Alfred von Trippitz, was building the high seas fleet with which he intended to challenge the supremacy of the Royal Navy. He focused on expensive battleships, and there was no role for submarines in his fleet, because that makes sense, right? Think about that. How many of you stupid ass regular people who are, not generals or commanders in armies would know that you have a technology, an underwater technology that the other guys don't have, and you would think, nah, that's not going to be useful. I mean, a whole bunch of this battle is fought at sea, but having underwater attack, what would be the purpose of that? Only when Krupp exported his submarines to Russia, Italy, Norway, and Austria-Hungary did Trippitz order one submarine. The SMU-1 was a completely redesigned Karp-class submarine, and when the Imperial German Navy commissioned it on December 14, 1906, it was the last major navy to adopt submarines. The U-1 had a double hull and a single torpedo tube. It used an electric motor powered by batteries for submerged propulsion and a cording kerosene engine for charging the batteries and propulsion on the surface. The 50% larger SMU-2 U-2, commissioned in 1908, had two torpedo tubes. Man, they were just knocking these things out. So, again, you have to see how there's all this detail, but the detail about the functionality is almost non-existent. It used an electric motor powered by batteries for submerged propulsion. That's it. An electric motor powered by batteries. Where can I find the history of this electric motor development? Let's see. I'll click on the electric motor and see what it has to say, but it's not going to be specific to submarines. So, history. Before modern electromagnetic motors, experimental motors that worked by electrostatic force were investigated. The first electric motors were simple electrostatic devices described in experiments by Scottish monk Andrew Gordon and American experimenter Benjamin Franklin in the 1740s. Gotta love it. You gotta love it, man. I mean, it's like if we were making a family tree and all of these different events were people, it wouldn't take too long before we got to Ben Franklin for most of this shit. The theoretical principle behind them, Coulomb's law, was discovered but not published by Henry Cavendish in 1771. Of course. Why would he discover it but not publish it? I mean, you know, back in 1771, there was probably a really well-known register of published ideas that any Joe Jackass could publish their idea in, and then it would be read about by this jackass in 2024, right? Like it's amazing how I'm not even sure the word, like blase, like how much they yada yada over so much of it, and we just accept it as all the people that argue with me and shit. They say all these things, but it's like you don't have the same questions I have. I'm not asking like crazy questions, am I? How did they come up with these motors? How did this whole thing come to existence?
Oh, look at that.
You know, there you go. Does that, you don't have those questions right now. You don't have those questions. You know, you don't wonder how records were so meticulously kept throughout history back when we didn't have phones and we didn't have even mail systems yet. Like, and just random people throughout the world come up with ideas and they somehow, like one of my favorite ones is Dionysus and why we call this 2024 AD. The idea that somebody in 525 does some sort of calculating using some sort of like again, I don't what books did this random dude in Italy have access to that allowed him to calculate that it was 525? What accurate historical records was he look? Okay, so the battle of this was 35 years ago. Okay, and then we have this. Oh yeah, I remember this battle, and then my great grandfather fought in this battle. Like, it's 525, or it's what ends up being 525. Whatever year it actually was, then I'm not sure. But to think that this guy just goes, no, we're going to change things up, and he somehow goes and convinces, meets with. I mean, it's Italy. It's 525. How would that affect the entire world? How long does it take the idea that the leader in Italy, which wasn't even Italy back then, it was, you know, Italy was like the United States back then, and or at least it was prior to, like in the 1800s, there was no Italy. It was a whole bunch of other little countries and manors and shit like that. So who knows what the fuck it was. But the idea that this one random guy goes to his leadership and he says, I think we should change the year. And they all go, yeah, okay, cool. Let's do that. And now let's backdate all our history. And everybody around the world, you join in. We all do this at the same time. We all backdate all our history. And if you get to anything that you can calculate somehow is prior to 525, then you go, you call those minus numbers. That becomes minus. We'll call that BC. And it's weird because they say that like the oldest writings that they have referring to Christ's stories are the Dead Sea Scrolls, which happen to be found in 1946 in a cave. There was one or two of the scrolls were found. And then the cave system was lost. It was 150 yards away from a settlement, but it was lost for a good couple years, while Israel basically made the rest of them, spread them out, and then they found them. Like, it all just happened to coincide with the foundation of Israel. And that's why when people talk about the earliest known works associating Christ are from 17 or are from about 70 years after his death, those are the Dead Sea Scrolls. Prior to this Dead Sea Scrolls, the earliest known accounts were from 900. I forgot what they're called, but it was from 900. So basically, you're supposed to believe that the whole Christian narrative wasn't written down or talked about. It was just a big game of telephone for 900 plus years. And then somebody finally wrote it down, and they wrote it down accurately. But like I said, Dionysius supposedly calculated that he wanted our history to be Christ-centered. So he said he made it 525 and said 525 years ago was Anun Donin or whatever it's called. The year of our Lord. There is no year zero. It goes from 1 AD to 1 BC. And
Did they call it 1 BC before they knew about Jesus?
duh. And they were counting backwards. They knew it. They were like, I can't wait till next
Something's
year.
happening.
5 was really difficult, but 4 is going to be awesome.
It is.
Hey, what's going to happen after we get to 1? Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
We just jumped to 1 AD. But there was no zero. They didn't have the concept of zero back in 525. So I don't know how they did math without the concept of zero. I don't know how they built anything. I don't know how any of the science we're told exists because the concept of zero didn't reach Western world until around 11 to 1300 AD. It was first theorized in the 600s by a guy in India, but it didn't reach the Western world until 11 to 1300. They had no concept of zero. According to the narrative, you have to believe because you think I'm crazy. Now, went way off to try to prove a point. Not sure what the point was. Probably that they were lying. But we were talking about Coulomb's law was discovered but not published by Henry Cavendish in 1771. So how do we know he discovered it? If he didn't publish it, how do we know he discovered it? Not 20 minutes ago, I had over 200 viewers, and now I'm down to 22. Wonder how that happens. Talking about the exact same things, and yet somehow the feed just falls apart. Interesting. This law was discovered independently by Charles Augustin de Coulomb in 1785, who published it so that it is now known by his name. He discovered this independently. Wait, what are we talking about? The electric motors. Simple electric devices described in experiments by Scottish monk Andrew Gordon and Ben Franklin. The theoretical principle behind them. So the theoretical principle, yes. Theoretical principle, known as Coulomb's law, was discovered by Henry Cavendish in 1771, but he didn't write it down, didn't publish it. And independently discovered by the guy who it was named after 14 years later. Due to the difficulty of generating the high voltages they required, electrostatic motors were never used for practical purposes. But they theoretically existed. They theoretically existed so much that we talk about them today. The invention of the electrochemical battery by Alessandro Volata in 1799, Jesus Christ, made possible the production of persistent electric currents. Hans Christian Ørsted discovered in 1820 that an electric current creates a magnetic field, which can exert a force on a magnet. It only took a few weeks for Andre Marie Ampère to develop the first formulation of electromagnetic interaction and present the Ampere's force law that described the production of mechanical force by the interaction of an electrical current and a magnetic field. Seems strange, right? It just seems strange that this is in the 1800s, in the 1820s. So much of this seemingly exists, like this rediscovery of shit exists after something happens in the 1700s. And you think like these don't seem like these seem like things that are, you know, the people that were capable of building crazy shit back in the day. You're telling me they didn't know all this stuff? Michael Faraday gave the first demonstration of the effect with a rotary motor on September 3rd, 1821, in the basement of the Royal Institution. Now you think about that. Like, so this first demonstration on September 3rd, 1821, well, this thing's well documented. But how any of it came to be, how, you know, figured this shit out, all that stuff, well, we don't know that. A free hanging wire was dipped into a pool of mercury on which a permanent magnet, PM, was placed. When a current was passed through the wire rotated around the magnet, showing that the current gave rise to a close circular magnetic field around the wire. Faraday published the results of his discovery in the Quarterly Journal of Science and sent copies of his paper along with pocket-sized models of his device to colleagues around the world so they could also witness the phenomenon of electromagnetic rotations. In 1820, he is I mean, I would imagine having to write out, or at least paying people to have to write each present. Like, you can't just put it on the copy machine and you know, make copies that you send to somebody. They have, each one of those things has to be written out, and then a little pocket-sized model of the machine put together so it can then be shipped to his colleagues all over the world via Amazon. Like, what were they? Amazon Prime? That's how they were shipping the shit back then?
Yeah. Cheapest way to go, baby.
This motor is often demonstrated in physics experiments, substituting brine for toxic mercury. Yeah, mercury is not what they tell us it is. Mercury is like like the secret to a lot of shit, which is why they've made it so illegal for us. Barlow's wheel was an early refinement to this Faraday demonstration, although these and similar homopolar motors remained unsuited to practical application until late in the century. Jedlick's electromagnetic self-rotor, 1827, the historic motor still works perfectly today. Does it spin? Is it supposed to be like a fan, I believe? An electric motor presented to Kelvin, just Kelvin, by James Joule in 1842, Hungarian Museum, Glasgow. So you think about this stuff, right? And you think about all these pieces that are attached. And so you think, okay, so either they had a really great Home Depot back then, Or the guy that invented this shit also happened to be really good at smithing. Or somehow he knew the smither and went and had him smith out the, like, I mean, it's just strange to think about, like, so how was all this travel taking place and what was going on? In 1827, Hungarian physicist Anyos Jedlik started experimenting with electromagnetic coils after Jedlik solved the technical problems of continuous rotation with the invention of the commutator. He called his early devices electromagnetic self-rotators or self-rotors, although they were used only for teaching. In 1828, Jedlik demonstrated the first device to contain three main components of practical DC motors: the stator, rotor, and commutator. The device employed no permanent magnets, as the magnetic fields of both the stationary and revolving components were produced solely by the currents flowing through their windings. Windings, yes. But no practical use, right? So I could sit here and read about motors all day. I'm trying to figure out how we get to the motors that can be used in submarines. I guess the first commutator DC electric motor capable of turning machinery was invented by English scientist William Sturgeon in 1832. Following Sturgeon's work, a commuter type direct electric current electric motor was built by American inventors Thomas Davenport and Emily Davenport. So, I mean, I just think it's strange to think that, like, okay, so a scientist in England invents this motor capable of this and that in 1832, and then somehow the Davenports know about it and improve on it in 1837. Within 5 years, the motors ran up to 600 revolutions per minute and powered machine tools and a printing press. Due to the high cost of primary battery power, the motors were commercially unsuccessful and bankrupted the Davenports. Several inventors followed Sturgeon in the development of DC motors, but all encountered the same battery cost issues. I mean, you think about, again, how were they, what the fuck? Okay. Sorry, just some little kids out running, barely dressed, and it's cold out there. And finally, the adult came and got them. I was like, what the fuck? Why are there? All right, that makes me mad when I see shit like that, man. As no electricity distribution system was available at the time, no practical commercial market emerged for these motors. After many other more and less successful attempts with relative weak rotating and reciprocating apparatus, after many more or less successful attempts with relatively weak rotating and reciprocating apparatuses, Russian Moritz von Jacobi created the first real rotating electric motor in May 1834. It developed remarkable mechanical output power. His motor set a world record, which Jacobi improved 4 years later in September 1838. His second motor was powerful enough to drive a boat with 14 people across a wide river. It was also in 1839, 1840 that other developers managed to build motors with similar, then higher performance. With similar and then higher performance. In 1827, 1828, Jedlik built a device using similar principles to those used in his electromagnetic self-rotators that was capable of useful work. He built a model electric vehicle that same year. A major turning point came in 1864. This is now after submarines had already been being built and used in 1850 and shit like that. When Antonio Pesanati first described the ring amateur, although initially conceived in a DC generator, i.e. a dynamo. This feature symmetrically grouped coils closed upon themselves and connected to the bars of a commutator, the brushes of which delivered practically non-fluctuating current. The first commercially successful DC motor followed the developments by Zeno Grami, who in 1871 reinvented Passanati's design and adopted some solutions by Werner Simons. A benefit to DC machines came from the discovery of the reversibility of the electric machine, which was announced by Siemens in 1867 and observed by Panciati in 1869. Gram accidentally demonstrated it on the occasion of the 1873 Vienna World's Fair when he connected two such DC devices up to 2 kilometer from each other. He connected two such DC devices up to 2 kilometers from each other, using one of them as a generator and the other as a motor. The drum rotor was introduced by Friedrich von... I could just keep reading all these things, but they don't... It's not like I can put it into the practical use of it, right? Like, I want to know when the submarine motor was first invented. Improved iron losses. Used the first and other Sprague inventors at this time. Prior work done while employed by Thomas Edison allowed power from electric motors to be returned to the electric grid, provided for electric distribution to trolleys via overhead wires and the trolley pole, and provided control systems for electric operations. This allowed Sprague to use electric motors to invent the first electric trolley system in 1887, 1888 in Richmond, Virginia. The electric elevator and the control system in 1892, and the electric subway with independently powered, centrally controlled cars. That's just, the history of the subway. We're going to have to look into that because that's, I just, how do you drill holes like that? What were they using back in the 1800s to do that shit? 1892, like AC motors, Nikola Tesla, Steadfast, blah, blah, blah. 21st century. And then we just sort of like, it just jumps. It's crazy.
I don't know. Right.
Externally. Operating principle. Well, I'm going to call him. You just got to wait. I'll call you.
Know where you're live at.
On YouTube. I'll send you the thing.
On YouTube. He'll send you the thing.
You butthole.
He had no idea. Nathan, say hi to Charles. Nicholas. getting so big, aren't they? You gotta put this up. I know. Charles is, it's been made in Germany, Charles.
All right, that was Charles. That was the bandmate in Germany. All right, so I'm. See, Charles would be on your guys' team with this one. He would be telling me I'm crazy. Submarines absolutely exist. So that was early U-boats. That was what I read you, and that was the. Biatch. Okay, so wait, where were we in this? Battleships, Carb-class submarines, electric motor powered by batteries for submerged propulsion, and the courting kerosene engine, right? Because speed and range was severely limited underwater while running on battery power, U-boats were required to spend most of their time surfaced, running on fuel engines, diving only when attacked or for torpedo strikes. That's what I'm saying. They just go beneath the water's surface. They're not diving way down. The more ship-like hull design reflects the fact that these were primarily surface vessels that could submerge when necessary. Exactly. This contracts with the cylindrical profile of modern nuclear submarines. Now we jump to nuclear. Let's do it. A nuclear submarine is a submarine powered by a nuclear reactor, but not necessarily nuclear armed. Nuclear submarines have considerable performance advantages over conventional, typically diesel-electric submarines. Nuclear propulsion, being completely independent of air, frees the submarine from the need to surface frequently, as is necessary for conventional submarines. The large amount of power generated by a nuclear reactor allows nuclear submarines to operate at high speed for long periods, and the long interval between refuelings grants a virtually unlimited range, making the only limits on voyage times being the factors such as need to restock food or other consumables. This should be really interesting. The limited energy stored in electric batteries means that even the most advanced conventional submarines can remain submerged only a few days at low speed and only a few hours at top speed. Though recent advances in air-independent propulsion have somewhat ameliorated this disadvantage, which is strange because when you look up air-independent propulsion, it literally only talks about failures. The high cost of nuclear technology means that relatively few of the world's military powers have fielded nuclear submarines. Radiation incidents have occurred within the Soviet submarines, including serious nuclear and radiation accidents, but American naval reactors, starting with the SW-1 and iterations of designs, have operated without incident since the USS Nautilus SSN-571 launched in 1954. Oh, this is going to get real good. The USS Nautilus, the first nuclear-powered sub. So I guess we should go there first, huh? So let's do that. Well, wait, we got to go to S1W. S1W reactor was the first prototype naval reactor. Oh, so we're not going to. The designation S1W stands for Submarine Platform 1 First Generation Core, designed by the contractor. W. Westinghouse was the contracted designer and is a later Navy designation. During the plant's early years, the project's name was Submarine Thermal Reactor. The land-based nuclear reactor was built at the National Reactor Testing Station, later called the Idaho National Engineering Laboratory near Arco, Idaho. The plant was the prototype for the power system of the USS Nautilus. Everything's the prototype. the world's first nuclear-powered submarine, which used the improved S-2W reactor. The specific location of the vast Idaho National Laboratory where the SW-1 prototype was located was the Naval Reactors Facility. The design, under the leadership of Captain, later Admiral Hyman G. Rickover, Naval Reactors followed a concurrent design strategy, with the design and construction of the S-1W reactor taking place ahead of the design and construction of the Nautilus. This enabled problems to be identified and resolved before they appeared in the shipboard plant. In the shipboard plant, right, because it's a nuclear plant inside the ship. To better support this design process, the S-1W power plant was built inside a submarine hull. While the cramped spaces prevented engineers from obtaining information on some plant components, it provided a much more realistic example of how the shipboard plant would have been constructed. And that's it. So that is the Nautilus reactor core prototype. Right? I mean, duh. That seems real, doesn't it? And that's it. That's the design. That's all you get to learn. The SW1 was a pressurized water reactor that utilized water as the coolant, and we get to find it. Neutron moderation as its primary system, and enriched uranium-235 as its fuel elements. The S1W, I keep wanting to say SW1. Shawn Wayne's 1. The S-1W reactor reached criticality on March 30th, 1953. In May of that year, it began power operations, performing a 100-hour run that simulated a submerged voyage from the east coast of the United States to Ireland. This test run clearly demonstrated the revolutionary impact that nuclear propulsion would have upon the submarine, which prior to that time was greatly limited by its ability to conduct continuous underwater operations by battery life and by oxygen requirements of diesel propulsion systems. The heated pressurized water of the S-1W reactor power plant was circulated through heat exchangers in order to generate high pressure saturated steam in a separate water loop. This saturated steam powered steam turbines for propulsion and generation of electricity. These faculties were constructed inside an elevated hull simulating the engineering portion of the Nautilus hull. A single propeller was simulated through the use of a water brake. Large exterior water spray ponds were used to dissipate the heat energy created in the facility into the air. Following the commissioning of the USS Nautilus, the S1W plant was operated to support plant testing and training of operators. Trainees were graduates of the Naval Nuclear Power School in Bainbridge, Maryland, Mare Island, CA, or Orlando, Florida, all locations now closed. The course of study lasted 6 months and consisted of a combination of classroom and closely supervised practical training. In the mid-1960s, the S-1W core was removed. An extension was bolted to the top of the reactor vessel so that a larger S-5W reactor core could be installed. After that time, the prototype was called S-1W S-5W core. The new core was first taken critical in the late summer of 1967 in order to use the additional power generated by the S-5W reactor. Additional facilities were added in order to dump the excess steam when the plant was operated at high power levels. These steam dumps were conducted in the same building but outside the mock submarine hull. The S-1W S-5W plant was shut down permanently in 1989. So it's all So that's that. All right, that's the SW1, and that, I guess that's the same as the Nautilus. I mean, you know what? We'll do part 5 tomorrow. Captain Nemo's fictional submarine. That's funny. Captain Nemo's is great submarine shop here in Detroit. So that's going to be that for today. Tomorrow we'll do part 5, and hopefully you join us. Should be interesting. Pedophiles, kill yourself.